The sky was burning red as explosions shook the ground. The battlefield was nothing but smoke, ash, and screams. Humans and Virelians, two powerful species, fought like wild beasts. In this chaos stood Lyra, a young Virelian girl with purple skin and glowing silver eyes. She was smaller than the other Virelian warriors, but faster and sharper. Her heart was different to softer. More curious about life beyond war, Lyra had trained her whole life to fight. Yet she never enjoyed the killing. She always believed there was more to existence than blood and victory. But her people, proud and cold, saw kindness as weakness. Even her commander often scolded her, saying, "Compassion will get you killed on this terrible day." Lyra's unit was ambushed by human forces, gunfire, laser blasts, and the roar of war machines filled the air. The Virelians fought with fury, their tall, armored bodies crashing into human lines. Lyra fought too, quick with her energy blades, slicing through enemies, but her focus was on protecting her wounded comrades. She dragged an injured Virelian away from the front line, even as bullets flew past her. Then, everything changed. A human sniper spotted her and fired. The bullet struck her leg, sending her crashing to the ground. Pain shot through her body, her vision blurred. She tried to stand, but her leg refused to move. More shots came. Another blast tore into her side. Lyra collapsed, bleeding and gasping. For air, she cried out for help, her voice weak but desperate. Her unit heard her. They looked back, but instead of coming to her, they turned away. Their leader shouted, "Leave her. She's finished. Keep moving." Lyra's heart broke more than her body. She watched in horror as her own people abandoned her without a second thought. She was not dead, not yet, but in their eyes, she was already gone. Her hands clawed at the dirt, trying to crawl, but the pain was too much, her strength fading fast. Around her, the battle moved on, both sides pushing forward and leaving behind the broken. Smoke covered the sky, and her cries were swallowed by the sounds of war. But not everyone ignored her. In the distance, hidden behind a damaged tank, stood a human soldier, Captain Reed, a seasoned warrior with scars that told his story. He had seen countless deaths, lost friends, and learned that war cared for no one. But when his eyes fell on Lyra, something inside him refused to stay cold. He watched the alien girl struggling, her face filled with pain and betrayal. She was supposed to be the enemy, yet she looked no different from a lost, wounded soul. His comms buzzed, his squad calling him to regroup, but Reed couldn't move. His conscience screamed louder than his orders. Finally, he made his decision. With his rifle slung on his back, he ran toward Lyra. Bullets zipped around him. Explosions rocked the earth. But Reed kept moving, his heart pounding. Lyra saw him approach and weakly raised her blade. She thought he came to finish her, but instead, Reed knelt beside her. "Easy," he said gently. "I'm not here to hurt you." Lyra blinked in confusion. Barely understanding his words, her eyes filled with tears, both from pain and surprise. Why would a human help her? She was the enemy. Yet here he was, lifting her up carefully, as if she mattered. Reed carried her, step by step, through the burning field. His comrades shouted over the comms, "Reed, what the hell are you doing? Leave her," but he ignored them. He carried her weight, her blood staining his armor. Lyra's head rested against his shoulder. She whispered in her weak voice, "Why? Why help me?" Reed didn't have a grand answer. He simply said, "Because no one deserves to die alone." Those words echoed in Lyra's mind. No one deserved to die alone. She had never heard kindness in the middle of war. Yet this human, her enemy, carried her like a friend. Through fire, smoke, and death, Reed didn't stop. Every step was a fight against the world. His breath grew heavy, his muscles screamed. But he didn't care, because leaving her was not an option. Somewhere deep inside, he knew saving her was the only right thing in a wrong world. Finally, he found an old, half-destroyed bunker. He kicked the door open and laid Lyra gently inside. She was barely awake, her breathing shallow. Reed grabbed his medkit, starting to patch her wounds. He didn't know if she would live, but he had to try. Outside, the war raged on. But inside the bunker, something different began. A bond between two enemies, forged not by blood, but by mercy, in the middle of betrayal, pain, and war. One human soldier refused to abandon the alien girl. The air inside the bunker was heavy. Dust hung in the dim light, flickering from a broken ceiling panel. Captain Reed sat beside Lyra, his armor stained with dirt and blood. He had managed to stop her bleeding, but she was still unconscious. Every breath she took was shallow, almost as if her body had already given up. Reed stared at her alien face, silver eyes half open, pale skin marked with glowing lines that shimmered faintly even now. She was beautiful in a strange way, not like a human, but delicate, fragile, and alien. Yet there was something painfully familiar in her expression, the face of someone who had been thrown away. And Reed understood that feeling too well. He had lost people before, seen comrades left behind when they couldn't keep up. His cums buzzed again, the sharp voice of his squad leader barking orders. "Reed, report back. We've marked your location." "What the hell are you doing with that, Zeno?" Reed glanced at the radio, his hand hovering over the button. He could lie, say he was injured, say he was pinned down. But the truth was simple. He had chosen to stay. He pressed the come button and spoke. "I'm not leaving her," Reed said firmly. "She's alive, and she's not a threat right now." Silence crackled through the radio. Then came the reply, cold and sharp. "You're making a mistake, soldier. She's the enemy. You help her, and you're on your own." The channel went dead. Reed exhaled slowly. He had just cut himself off from his own people. Now he was alone, a human soldier stuck behind enemy lines. Protecting a wounded alien girl, it was madness. But it was a choice he made with his heart. Hours passed, and finally, Lyra stirred. She winced, her body aching, her eyes fluttered. Open to see the dim ceiling, then she turned her head slightly and saw Reed sitting nearby. Cleaning his rifle, for a moment, she didn't understand. She remembered falling, pain, and then this human carrying her. "Why?" she whispered. Weakly, Reed looked up, surprised to see her awake. "Why?" "Did you save me?" she asked again. Her voice was dry and soft, like a dying wind. Reed didn't answer right away. He stood, grabbed a small canteen, and helped her drink. "I don't know," he finally admitted. "Maybe I'm tired of watching. People die. Maybe I'm just not as heartless as my orders expect me to be." Lyra's eyes studied him. This human, this supposed enemy, had chosen to save her. No one from her own kind had cared. She looked away, ashamed. "My people." "They left me," she whispered. "They said I was weak, not worth saving." Reed sat back down, his gaze heavy with understanding. "Same thing happens with us," he said quietly. "If you can't keep up, you get left behind. But I don't." Like that rule, silence filled the bunker. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of two souls, realizing they shared the same pain. Lyra's strength was low, but her mind was awake. She watched Reed work, fixing a radio, patching his gear. He wasn't just a soldier, he was a survivor. "Why risk yourself for me?" she asked again. Reed chuckled faintly. "Because someone has to. If not me, then who? We're all just trying to survive. You were left for dead, but I couldn't walk away." "That's not the kind of man I am." Lyra's lips trembled. She had been taught that humans were brutal and merciless, yet here was one defying that belief. She wanted to hate him, but couldn't. Instead, she felt something else, gratitude. A warmth she hadn't felt since childhood. Reed stood up and checked the bunker's entrance. "We can't stay here forever," he said. "Sooner or later, patrols will find us. We need a plan." Lyra tried to sit up, but pain shot through her body. She collapsed back with a gasp. "Don't push yourself," Reed said, steadying her. "I'll help you heal, then we'll figure out how to get out of this mess." Lyra stared at him, her silver eyes reflecting the dim light. This human was unlike anyone she had met. He was her enemy by war, but her savior by choice. For the first time in her life, she whispered, "What's your name, human?" "Reed?" Smiled faintly. "Captain Reed," he answered. "And you, Lyra," she replied, her voice barely a breath. "Thank you." Captain Reed. At that moment, in the heart of war, an unlikely alliance was born. A human soldier and an abandoned alien girl, two enemies, trapped together, yet connected by the simple choice to save a life instead of ending it. The bunker was cold and smelled of rust. Its walls were cracked, the floor littered with old metal scraps and broken crates. But for Captain Reed and Lyra, it was the only safe place for miles outside. The war still roared, distant gunfire. the rumble of tanks, and the endless hum of drones patrolling the skies. Inside, only the sound of their breathing and the occasional drip of water echoed in the dark. Reed worked tirelessly. He used his field kit to patch Lyra's wounds properly. The human medicines weren't made for alien bodies, but he did his best. He wrapped her leg, cleaned the cuts, and gave her painkillers in small doses. Lyra watched him silently, her silver eyes dull but curious. She didn't understand why he cared so much in her world. The weak were left behind without a second thought. "Rest," Reed said gently. "You need time to heal." Lyra nodded slightly, though her mind was still restless. She tried to speak, but stopped. What words could she say to the human who saved her life? She closed her eyes, listening to the distant rumble of war. In her dreams, she saw her people's faces. Not one of them had looked back when she screamed for help. The pain of their betrayal hurt deeper than her injuries. Days passed, though time felt strange inside the bunker. Reed had a small stash of rations, barely enough for himself, but he shared them with Lyra without hesitation. He also scouted the nearby ruins when it was safe, looking for supplies. Each time he left, Lyra waited, unsure if he would ever return. But Reed always came back, often tired, sometimes bruised, and each time, Lyra felt a small relief. He hadn't abandoned her one evening, as Reed returned with a few water packs. He noticed Lyra trying to sit up. Her body was still weak, but her spirit was stronger. "You're stubborn," he said with a small smile. Lyra managed a faint grin. "I won't survive lying down forever." Her voice was a little stronger now, her eyes a little brighter. Reed decided to teach her some human words. He pointed at himself. Reed then pointed at her. "Lyra," she understood and repeated. "Reed," her accent sharp but soft. They laughed, the sound awkward but genuine. It was the first real laugh in days. Even in war, small moments like this felt like treasure. As they communicated more, Lyra started to trust him. She told him about her people, the Varelians, their culture of strength and pride, how weakness was shameful, how compassion was dangerous. She confessed that she never truly fit in. Her heart wasn't built for cruelty, and that was why they left her to die. Reed listened carefully. He saw the loneliness in her words. "Sounds like you don't belong with them," he said. Lyra looked down. "Maybe I don't." Reed then shared his own story, how he had lost his squad in a failed mission, how he lived with survivor's guilt, and how the war had changed him from a proud soldier to a man just trying to do the right thing. In the dim light of the bunker, two strangers, a human and an alien, shared their broken hearts. Neither of them expected to find comfort in the other, yet here they were, surviving together. Reed even found an old blanket and wrapped Lyra in it carefully. "You're freezing," he said. Lyra blinked at the gesture, unused to such care. "No one ever did this for me," she whispered. Reed chuckled softly. "First time for everything." Slowly, Lyra regained her strength. Her wounds began to close. Her muscles still weak, but recovering, Reed helped her stretch her limbs, guiding her with patience. He even fashioned a crude walking stick from metal scraps to help her stand. When Lyra first stood on her shaky legs, Reed smiled proudly. "See? Told you you're stubborn," he teased. Lyra chuckled. "Maybe I learned it from you." Outside, the war was getting worse. Reed knew that soon the area would be swarming with both human and Varelian patrols. Staying hidden much longer was not an option. He looked at Lyra, who now stood with effort but determination. "We need to move soon," he said. Lyra nodded, understanding the risk. "I'm ready," she said softly. "I won't slow you down." Reed shook his head. "You're not slowing me down, Lyra. We're in this together now." She looked at him, her heart warming at those words. Together, something she had never truly felt before. That night, while the sky burned faintly outside, they sat beside a small makeshift lantern. Two former enemies, now allies, planning their escape from a war that wanted them both dead. Neither of them knew if they would survive. But one thing was clear. They were no longer alone. The days inside the bunker passed slowly. But for Reed and Lyra, each day was a small victory. Lyra's wounds had started to heal, though her steps were still shaky. Her once graceful alien body now moved with effort, but her spirit burned stronger every morning. Reed helped her stretch her legs. He made simple exercises for her, guiding her step by step. At first, she stumbled, frustrated, but Reed was patient. always encouraging her. "Keep going, Lyra," he would say. "You're stronger than you think." She would glare at him, but keep trying. Somehow, his belief in her gave her strength. She wasn't used to anyone believing in her, not even herself. At night, when the sky outside darkened, they sat together. Reed taught her more human words, and in return, she taught him Varelian phrases. Their conversations were clumsy, filled with laughter and corrections, but each word shared made the distance between them smaller. Lyra told him about her homeworld, a place of vast silver forests and glowing rivers, a world that looked beautiful but felt cold to her heart. Reed listened. Imagining those alien landscapes, he shared his own memories of Earth, blue skies, green forests, crowded cities, full of life and noise. Lyra listened with wonder to her Earth sounded alive and colorful, very different from the strict, honor-driven life of the Varelians. One evening, as they shared a meal of old rations, Lyra asked a question that had lingered in her mind. "Why did you really save me, Reed?" Reed paused, his eyes thoughtful. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe because I was tired of being just a soldier. Maybe I wanted to do something human, something that mattered beyond orders and battles." Lyra stared at him. His words felt heavy, yet sincere. She had always been taught that humans were cruel, that they destroyed without feeling, yet Reed had risked everything for her. And now he treated her like an equal, not an enemy. "I don't understand your people." She whispered, "Neither do I." Reed replied with a chuckle, "But I understand myself, and I know I couldn't leave you there to die." The bond between them grew stronger. Every shared story, every laugh, every quiet moment stitched them closer together. Lyra began to see Reed not just as a human soldier, but as someone different, someone she trusted, someone she didn't want to lose. She trained harder. Pushing her body to recover, Reed crafted makeshift weapons, teaching Lyra how to use human rifles. Her natural agility, though weakened, made her a quick learner. Together, they trained. Side by side, enemies turned allies, partners in survival. One day, while practicing, Reed slipped on rubble. Lyra caught him laughing. "You're getting slow, human," she teased. Reed laughed too. "Or maybe you're just getting faster." It was a small thing, but in that laughter, they both felt something different. Something warmer than friendship, but neither dared speak it aloud. Not yet. The war was still out there. They couldn't afford distractions. One night, they sat under the faint light of their bunker lantern. Outside, the war machines moved the sky, trembling with distant explosions. Reed looked at Lyra and asked, "What will you do when we get out of here?" Lyra thought for a while. "I don't know," she admitted. "My people left me. I don't think I have a home anymore." Reed nodded slowly, understanding her loneliness. "Then maybe you make your own home," he said, "with people who choose you, not because of blood or race, but because they care." Lyra stared at him, those words settling deep in her heart. She had never felt chosen before, never felt like she mattered to anyone, but Reed made her feel seen, important that night. Sleep didn't come easily. Both of them lay on opposite sides of the bunker, but their thoughts were on each other. In a world torn by war, where death was always near, they had found something rare, a bond that no war could easily break. And though neither spoke of it openly, they both knew they weren't just surviving anymore. They were protecting each other, not as human and alien, but as something more, something worth fighting for. The days of hiding were over. Reed knew it the moment he saw the sky glow with the light of incoming dropships. Both human and Varelian forces were closing in, scanning the ruins with drones and patrols. Staying in the bunker meant death, either from starvation or discovery. Reed packed his few supplies into a torn backpack. Lyra stood beside him, still limping slightly, but standing tall, her eyes once filled with pain. Now burned with quiet determination. "We leave tonight," Reed said. Lyra nodded, her grip tightening on the small rifle Reed had given her. She wasn't as fast as before, but her will was stronger. "Where will we go?" she asked. "There's an old extraction point, 10 miles east," Reed answered. "If we make it there, I can send a signal for evac, and if your people find me first," Lyra asked, her voice low. Reed glanced at her, his face serious. "Then they'll have to go through me." Nightfall came quickly. The air was cold, the stars hidden behind smoke and clouds. Reed led the way, keeping to the shadows of broken Walls and shattered buildings, Lyra followed closely. Each step careful but confident, they moved like ghosts through the ruins. Listening for the hum of patrol drones, every sound made their hearts pound. Every shadow could be death. At one point, they heard the metallic buzz of a Varelian patrol. Lyra's heart froze, the voices of her own people, sharp and cold. Reed pulled her into a collapsed tunnel, covering her mouth gently. They waited, barely breathing. Lyra's body shook, not just from fear, but from the sting of betrayal. Those voices belonged to soldiers who had left her to die. Now they hunted her like an enemy. When the patrol passed, Reed looked into her eyes. "You okay?" he whispered. Lyra swallowed hard, then nodded. "I'm fine," she lied. But Reed could see the pain behind her eyes. He didn't press, just gave her a reassuring nod. They kept moving, deeper into the ruins. Hours passed, their bodies aching. Red kept checking a small map on his wrist device. "We're halfway there," he whispered. Lyra forced herself to keep up, but then danger found them. A human recon drone buzzed overhead, its scanner lights sweeping the ground. They ran, ducking under debris, but the drone spotted them. Alarms echoed through the night. Reed cursed. Under his breath, "They've seen us." From the distance, human soldiers responded. Running towards the signal, Reed turned to Lyra, ready to fight. He asked. Lyra raised her rifle, her silver eyes glowing faintly. "Always," she replied. The first group of soldiers arrived, shouting orders. They saw Lyra and fired without hesitation. But Reed stood in front of her, returning fire with precision. Lyra fought too, her hands steady despite her injuries. Together, they covered each other, moving, shooting, surviving. Reed shouted, "We need to move, can't stay here." Lyra nodded, limping but firing back. They moved between ruins, gunfire lighting the dark. At one point, a soldier aimed at Reed. Lyra didn't hesitate. She shot first. The soldier fell, and Reed looked back. "You saved me," he said. Surprised, Lyra smiled faintly. "You saved me first." Their bond wasn't just words now, it was forged in every bullet fired, every step taken together. They weren't just escaping, they were protecting each other. Every time Reed stumbled, Lyra pulled him forward. Every time Lyra weakened, Reed held her steady. Finally, after what felt like endless running and fighting, they saw it, Broken Come's tower, standing crooked against the sky. The extraction point. "We made it," Reed whispered. Though he was barely standing, Lyra collapsed to her knees, exhausted. But they were alive. Together, Reed activated the beacon, sending a signal to any nearby human ships. Then he looked at Lyra. "We're not safe yet, but we're close." Lyra looked up at him, her face streaked with dirt, but her eyes shining. "Thank you, Reed," she said. He smiled, sitting beside her. "Thank me when we're off this damn planet." In that moment, beneath a sky filled with smoke and stars, two enemies, now allies, sat side by side, not just survivors, but friends. And maybe something even more. The night was deadly quiet. Reed and Lyra sat near the Come's tower, waiting for a response to the signal. But in war, quiet was never safe. It was the kind of silence that warned of incoming death. Reed checked his rifle, eyes sharp. Lyra sat close, her body tired but her senses alert. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed through the ruins, not just one or two, but many. Shadows moved between broken walls, armored figures closing in. Reed aimed his rifle, his jaw tight. "They're here," he muttered. Lyra's eyes narrowed. She could hear the familiar stomp of Aurelian boots, her own people, the ones who left her for dead. Now they had come back, not to rescue her, but to kill the human beside her, and probably her too. The Varelian squad emerged from the shadows, tall and menacing. Their leader, a warrior named Commander Talek, stood at the front. His gaze landed on Lyra. His voice was like ice. "You should have died, Lyra. We left you because you were weak, and now you stand with the enemy." Lyra stood, even though her legs trembled. "I was weak," she said, her voice steady, "but not anymore. And I would rather stand with a human who saved me than with cowards." "Who abandoned me?" Talek sneered. "You betray your blood for this creature." He pointed at Reed with disgust. Reed stepped forward, gun ready, creature or not. "I'm the one who kept her alive," Reed said coldly. "Unlike you," Talek's soldiers raised their weapons. Reed tightened his grip. He knew they were outnumbered. but he wasn't going to let Lyra die again, not while he was breathing. Then, without warning, a firefight exploded. Laser blasts and bullets cut through the night. Reed and Lyra fought back to back, their movements synced without needing words. Lyra's body was still weak, but her mind was clear. Every shot she fired was for survival. For Reed, for herself, Reed moved like a shadow, precise and ruthless. But the enemy was many, and soon they were surrounded. A shot grazed Reed's side, blood staining his armor. Lyra saw him stumble, her heart twisted. She couldn't lose him, not after everything. She screamed and charged forward. With a burst of speed she didn't know she had, she tackled one of her own. Using his weapon, she fired wildly. Pushing them back, she wasn't the weak girl left on the battlefield anymore. She was a fighter, and she was not alone. Reed, seeing her courage, found his strength again. Together, they fought harder. They covered each other, moving as one. Every time Lyra fell, Reed pulled her up. Every time Reed staggered, Lyra stood by his side. Soon, only Talek remained. He stood there, bloodied but defiant. "You could have been one of us." He spat at Lyra. Lyra stepped forward, her rifle steady. "I am who I choose to be. And I choose this," she said, pointing at Reed. "At least he didn't leave me to die." With that, she fired. Talek fell, his eyes wide with disbelief. The leader who abandoned her was gone. Her past was gone with him. The ruins fell silent again. Reed slumped to the ground, breathing heavily. "You all right?" Lyra asked, dropping beside him. "Been worse," he muttered, with a faint smile. "You were incredible," Lyra smiled back. "Had to be, or I'd lose the only person who cared." A beep sounded on Reed's device, the extraction signal. Someone was coming. Reed looked up at the sky. "Looks like we're getting out of here." Lyra sighed, relief washing over her. She looked at Reed. "I'm not going back to my people," she whispered. Reed looked at her. "Then come with me," he said simply. "No more enemies, just us." Lyra nodded, for the first time. She felt like she had a choice, and she chose him together. They waited for the ship to arrive, bruised, bloodied, but alive, and more than that, together. Two souls who had no one, but who now had each other. The rescue ship landed with a low hum. Its lights cut through the smoke and darkness like a promise. Reed helped Lyra stand, though both of them leaned on each other for support. As the hatch opened, human Marines poured out, their weapons raised. They froze when they saw Lyra standing beside Reed, her silver eyes tired but sharp. The Marines pointed their rifles at her, ready to fire. Reed stepped in front of Lyra, without hesitation. "Stand down," he ordered, his voice firm despite his exhaustion. "She's with me." Confusion rippled through the squad. "Captain, she's the enemy," one Marine protested. Reed shook his head. "Not anymore. She's the reason I'm alive." Lyra stood silent, her heart heavy with uncertainty. Would these humans accept her? Or would they see her as nothing but a threat? But she stood her ground. She wasn't going to hide behind Reed, not anymore. The commander of the rescue team arrived, a stern woman with a scar running down her cheek. She looked at Reed, then at Lyra. "What's this?" she asked. Reed stared her in the eye. "She's my responsibility if you want to shoot her. You'll have to shoot me first." There was a long pause. Then the commander sighed. "Fine, but you better explain this to the brass." Reed smiled faintly. "I'll handle it." They boarded the ship together. Lyra sat beside Reed, watching the planet shrink beneath them. The war was still there, still raging, but for the first time, she wasn't part of it. She was leaving it behind, on the ship. Reed treated her wounds again. The medics were hesitant, but followed his lead. Some stared at Lyra with suspicion, others with curiosity. But no one touched her without Reed's word. He was her shield, even among his own. As the stars stretched outside the ship's window, Lyra whispered, "What happens now?" Reed looked at her, thoughtful. "Now, we find a way to live," he said. "No more fighting if we can help it." Lyra nodded slowly. "Do I still look like an enemy to you?" she asked quietly. Red smiled. "No, you look like someone I'm lucky to know." That made Lyra smile for real, a smile she hadn't felt in years. For the first time, she wasn't just a soldier or a discarded warrior. She was a person. She was Lyra. And she wasn't alone when the ship reached the human fleet. There were questions, there were threats, investigations, even anger. But Reed stood by her every step, and Lyra stood by him. Together, they faced the judgment of humans who didn't. understand, but in time, some did understand. They saw her bravery, her loyalty, and her will to live beyond war. Lyra learned human ways. She learned their language better. She trained her body, her mind, and with Reed, she became part of something new, a bridge between two species, proof that not all enemies stay enemies forever. Their stories spread among soldiers of a human captain and the alien girl he refused to abandon. It became a legend, a story of hope in a universe drowning in war. A reminder that sometimes all it takes to change everything is one person refusing to leave another behind. And as Lyra stood beside Reed, watching the stars beyond, she knew this was her new beginning. Not as Verelian, not just as an alien, but as herself. Lyra, the girl who survived because one human chose kindness over war.